Hi, this is Dr. Joe Green, head pastor of Antioch Assembly Church located in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, also the founder of the 2019 movement, and I want to share a couple of thoughts with you. I want to talk a little bit about this recent ban on Alex Jones. You guys may be familiar with Alex Jones. He has the popular podcast called InfoWars and PrisonPlanet.com and some of the other things he's done. He's considered a truther. He's considered a conspiracy theorist, if you will. Conspiracy theorist, sorry. And so he was recently banned from many social media platforms. And I want to talk a little bit about that because this should be a very dangerous signal to us as a whole. Because one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that, you know, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the First Amendment, but one of the things that we really have to keep in mind is that sometimes we get caught up in the fact that we may disagree with a person. And a lot of people may have disagreed with Alex Jones. He was a very polarizing figure. And so people either liked him or some people really hated him. He was very loud and boisterous and opinionated and all those other characteristics that he possessed. But I have to, as an American citizen, as a person who has ideas and philosophies and has a voice, I don't want that to happen to anybody else, even if I disagree with them. And I'm not saying that I disagree with everything Alex Jones said or did. What I am saying is that it's dangerous. I shouldn't want a person who has an opposing viewpoint of mine to be silenced, because what happens when the powers that be disagree with my opinion? And so we always have to have an open and honest dialogue. We always have to be open to different ideas and different doctrines and philosophies. And even if I think a person is 100% wrong, they have the right to voice their opinion. And so this should be a dangerous sign for us and a dangerous precedence that we shouldn't be okay with. Now, the First Amendment is vitally important to maintain the representative republic that we live in. It was so important that our founding fathers made it the First Amendment. Not only does it grant freedom of speech and freedom of the press, it also grants the free practice of religion without governmental interference. I'm going to say that again. It also grants the free practice of religion without governmental interference. And the reason I stress that point is a lot of times that we quote the separation of church and state, and we say it in the wrong context, because the separation of church and state, which wasn't in any of our founding documents, it was a letter written by Thomas Jefferson to the Baptist Convention in Virginia. And what he did was he promised them that the government wouldn't intervene in how they do their religion or practice their faith. And that was very important because a lot of the pilgrims, a lot of the settlers came from European countries where it was a church and state religion, like the Church of England. If you were in England, the Church of England, the government also ran the church. Or if you were in, the Roman Empire, when Constantine was the emperor, he made Christianity the religion of the Roman Empire. And because of that, the government actually ran the church. And so that's why you have a separation of church and state, not because you don't want the church to get involved in politics. That's what it's supposed to do. But it's because they didn't want politics to get involved with the church. So the government can't dictate to the church how they should practice their religion. So that's the reason behind the First Amendment. That's why governmental interaction with religion is important for us to always, and they're doing it right now. This whole LGBTQ thing, many pastors are getting in trouble because they're preaching what the Bible says about homosexuality, and they've now stamped it to be a hate crime. And you have to be careful about that, because the hate crimes laws are basically an anti-First Amendment political correct tool that has been used traditionally. But let's move forward. Currently, these principles of the First Amendment are under attack. And if you study the history of man and civilization, you'll understand how important these principles are. It's the plan of the globalists seeking to create a new world order that is threatening these institutions. There has been a recent ban, as I mentioned. Alex Jones is one of the more blatant, instances that this has happened. This has just recently happened. In over a 24-hour period, Alex Jones was banned from Apple, Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify. And here's why Facebook said. They released a detailed press statement on the matter, and they said that they recently removed your videos from Alex Jones' pages, as they violated their hate speech and bullying policies. Since then, they have notified of more content from his pages that glorified violence and used dehumanizing language to describe people who are transgender, Muslims, and immigrants, which violates our hate speech policies. After multiple strikes, Facebook shut down the pages and suspended the administrator. Now, hate speech is speech that attacks a person. This is what it's defined as: attacks a person or group on the basis of attributes of race, religion, ethnic origin, national origin, sex, disability, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Now, you got to realize that that the hate crimes legislation, or these designated characteristics, are all part of the attack on the First Amendment and political correctness. And I'm not saying, and so you have to realize also that hate speech is not speech that necessarily offends you or you disagree with. The actual definition of an illegal speech, okay, let me put it this way: you have freedom of speech in America, except for speech that incites or encourages violence against another person or damage to their property. So I can say whatever I want to, as long as I don't say go and fight this person, go and hurt this person, go tear down this building, or let's burn and riot in the streets. I can say whatever I want to, even if it offends you. You don't have a right not to be offended. That's not a guaranteed right in the Constitution. And the reason why we have to understand that is because if we get to a place where anything that offends a person is banned speech, then who's the one who's going to decide what's right and what's wrong? Who's the person? So it means whoever's in power is the one who gets to define what's right and what's wrong, which means any dissenting opinions or ideas will get shut down. And so even though it might not be my idea that's getting banned, I shouldn't want any idea to get banned because there's going to come a time where people will disagree with me, or they may say what I say is offensive. Even as a Christian or as a pastor, the Bible offends people. That's what it says. It's a stumbling block to many people. The message of the gospel and the message of Jesus Christ is a stumbling block to many. It offends people. And so Jesus said, I didn't come to bring peace. I came to bring a sword, because the separation happens based on the message of the gospel. So we already know that. So we shouldn't be surprised that certain people get offended by certain things. But, your speech is protected by the First Amendment unless it incites violence or damage to property or some type of violence, some type of, hurting someone or something like that. And when I say hurt, I'm talking about physical harm. I'm not talking about hurting a person's feelings. Because that's life. We got to get over it. People will disagree with you. You will get your feelings hurt in life. That's just how it happens. How life plays out. So anyway, when we designate certain groups as, for hate speech protection, we have to be very careful. Because, like I said, now if you are, sexual orientation is one of those that they put as hate speech, which means if I preach the message of the gospel, what the Bible says, then technically speaking, they can bring up this hate speech legislation and say you can't preach that. You can't preach against sin or gender identity or any of these type of things. So we have to be very careful. But more importantly, you have to understand the strategy of the powers that be. You have to understand the globalist strategy. This is something that when they plan a strategy out, they look down through generations. They plan 100 years ahead of time. And the reason it's easy for us to get caught up is because many times we think right now, or we think within a year or 2 or 6 months, we think immediacy, whereas they plan things out long term. And so when they start to put these things in place, because most people don't have the insight or discernment, we don't think it's a big deal. And by the time we catch up to what they're doing, then we're already fighting an uphill battle. It's like the homosexual agenda. They had to start putting things in place for a long time. And then by the time most Christians woke up and realized what their strategy was, they already had legislation in place. And now we're fighting an uphill battle. So you have to have discernment. You got to stand for principles and not people, because what they do is they use people and personalities in order to deceive us. But if we stand on principles and look at the patterns, then we won't fall victim to that. So this is all this stuff is part of what's called political correctness. And so we're going to talk about political correctness and how it's the actual strategy of the New World Order Illuminati group of people. The job of the press is supposed to be, or mainstream media, the press, whatever you want to call it, is supposed to be to inform the people what's going on. The American Free Press is supposed to report the news in an unbiased way. It should be nonpartisan, non-affiliating, with political parties or people, but standing for truth and principles. That's what it's supposed to do. That's the purpose of our free press. It's not supposed to be affiliated with a political party. It's not supposed to be affiliated with people or ideologies. It's supposed to stand for principles. It's supposed to give truth. It's supposed to report the news. It's not supposed to editorialize the news. You have a place, you know, back in the days, the newspaper or the news cast or whatever, where you said that they would have a thing up saying this is an editorial comment. It means this is a person's opinion. But now editorial and news reporting has been skewed. Those lines have been skewed, so there's no difference. So people that are reporting the news now are editorializing. They're using descriptive words in order to give you an opinion or to shape your opinion. And that's not what they're supposed to do. If they report the news, they're not supposed to give you adjectives that help you to make an opinion about what they're about to say. They're supposed to just give the news. The only time they can give an opinion is if it says, tragically someone got killed, or tragically a baby died. You can use a descriptive word for that, but if I'm giving you what someone said or what they did, I shouldn't editorialize it, because then I'm trying to tell you what you should feel about it, as opposed to just reporting the news. Think tanks that have been developed over the years, there's some you may want to look up, the Frankfurt School in Germany, the Tavistock Institute. These are called think tanks, where intellectual globalists got together and they start to strategize on how to socially engineer the public, the world. Socially engineering is mass mind control. It's a type of mass mind control. And they perfected these techniques in Nazi Germany. So you had the Frankfurt School in Germany. The Nazis actually used these techniques that were developed to garner support even for the German people, for Hitler. When he went to war, they used what was called propaganda. Now propaganda is known as public relations, but there was a gentleman by the name of Edward Bernays who developed propaganda that the Nazis used in order to garner public support when they went into war. Now it's called public relations because most people understand that propaganda was something that was used, so they just changed the name to public relations. And really, with public relations, the job of public relations is just to move public, to sway public opinion one way or another. The same philosophy was brought to America after World War II, when many of the Nazi scientists were brought to America via the U.S. intelligence agencies. They had two things. One was called Operation Paperclip, where they got a lot of the scientists from the Nazis to come to America. And there was also something called Project Mockingbird that the U.S. intelligence agencies used in order to push a globalist agenda. So just to show you that this was all part of the globalist agenda, that a lot of these Nazi scientists didn't get thrown in jail. Many of them got brought to America and used. And there was Operation Mockingbird and Paperclip. A lot of them were taken to Columbia University and some major universities, and in order to teach their techniques and to be used on the American public. And many of those techniques are still being used today. The CIA does and still has and still does promote the New World agenda that the globalists are pushing, and they're using the same tactics. Our modern news was actually crafted, how modern news is now, was actually crafted in a way to cause fear and trauma on the American public, and therefore allow them to be socially engineered, which, like I said, is also known as mass mind control. That's why a lot of times the news, they'll have this music and they'll say, breaking news, this is what's happening. It's supposed to instill fear and trauma in the American public, which is why they normally only report on negative stuff. You know, they might have a puffy, piece in the end that says, this lady is raising bunnies in her backyard to give away to sick children. That'd be way far down into the broadcast. The first news stories that you usually see is somebody got killed. There's a hurricane coming. The economy's failing. The Trump Russian probe is in full swing. All these things are first what they give you, because that's supposed to instill fear in you and traumatize you so that they can control you. It's fear-based mind control. Now, when CNN and with the inception of CNN and the other news networks, the news has now become one of the greatest tools of the New World Order and the misinformation of America, of the American public. News media are now primarily owned by the globalist New World Order corporations, and 90% of mainstream media is owned by 6 New World Order companies. I'm going to say that again. 90% of the mainstream media is owned by just 6 corporations, and all these corporations are globalist, New World Order corporations. And so, just to let you know that the narrative is being given to you, that most of the time you're not hearing just regular news and news reporting. You are actually being socially engineered to follow a certain agenda. That's why 90% of the mainstream media people, the newscasters and news reporters, all vote for the same people, because the candidate of the New World Order is the people that they are promoting. And so they support these people. Recently, alternative news sources with the the internet and with the free access to information, alternative news sources have become very popular because the public, to some degree, is waking up to what they deem as fake news. So the public is starting to understand that the media is not reporting fairly. It is promoting an agenda. And so, because the American public is waking up, the alternative media has really risen, which is why people like Alex Jones and Rebel Media, and there's a lot of them out there that actually are becoming more and more popular, because people are looking for alternative news sources and not just listening to what mainstream media reports about things. In response to this, we now see a move to stamp out these alternative news sources, and they're using hate speech to push a narrative. So they're really pushing this whole thing of hate speech. Like I mentioned with Alex Jones, that was the reason why Facebook and YouTube and some of these other platforms banned him, because they said he was violating hate speech rules. So again, this is a tool that they're using in order to quiet dissenting opinions. Major college campuses have also been infiltrated many years ago by the New World Order agenda, and they've been weaponized recently to fight against any ideas that contradict their narrative. If you understand, like Berkeley, University of California at Berkeley was historically a place for open dialogue and dissenting ideas, and people would go to debate. But recently, all these conservative speakers that go to Berkeley, they actually had riots, and they banned them from coming, and that violates the First Amendment. Especially if you're a college student. It just amazes me how college students would even tolerate that, because we all understand, anybody of age, and I'm in my 50s now, anybody of age knows that even though you might have been very intelligent in your 20s, you really didn't know a lot about life. And I guarantee you there's a whole lot of views and opinions you held that you were strong about in your 20s that you would have the exact opposite opinion about in your 50s, because that's how life works. So why would we insulate these college kids from hearing ideas that may be different than theirs? Instead of just pushing all liberal ideas to them, why not allow them to hear conservative ideas, even if those conservative ideas are ideas that they may think is wrong, but at least they ought to be exposed to them. Maybe they may have a different view after they hear the information that these people have. But so this stuff is intentional, that they're weaponizing these college campuses to really fight against hate speech. To fight against free speech by stamping every dissenting idea as hate speech. Also, understanding that they call them, what do they call them? They call them safe zones now. So what they're saying is college campuses should be a place that people don't get offended, and that's really demonic, and it's an anti-God, anti-freedom mindset. If you say that when you go to college you should never hear an opinion that offends you or differs from yours, that's dangerous, and we should never want to stand for that. You shouldn't want your child to be insulated from viewpoints that are different than theirs. It's just, you don't grow as a person, you don't grow intellectually, or especially you don't grow emotionally. It stifles you emotionally if you only hear things that agree with you, because life is not fair all the time, and everybody doesn't love you all the time. There are going to be dissenting opinions and viewpoints. There's going to be people that just don't like you just because. That's how life is. Whether you agree with it or not, that's the facts of the reality that we live in. So so let's look at real quick. I want to go through political correctness. Political correctness is actually one of the strategies that the Tavistock Institute developed in order to squelch any dialogue or ideas that oppose their agenda. The term that's used is critical theory. Critical theory is when gatekeepers attack any institution or ideology that goes against their narrative. So it's called critical theory. It's just another name for political correctness. Any institution like the family or Western culture or religion, they automatically attack it in order to destabilize it, in order for them to push their agenda or their viewpoint. And when I say gatekeepers, they promote opinion makers, and these opinion makers are people that they put in a platform, and they say these are your opinion makers. In the black community, these are your leaders. You know, LGBT, these are your leaders right here. These are the people you should listen to. And they're actually being promoted by the very gatekeepers that these movements are supposed to be challenging. It's very intentional and strategic in implementing their plan. They frame the narrative, and so whoever tells the story first normally puts themselves in a position of power. Even the Black Lives Matter movement. The Black Lives Matter movement was funded mainly by George Soros, who was a former Nazi sympathizer. And so what they did was he's dumped, I think last reported, about $100 million overall for things like Black Lives Matter. And so obviously if he's doing that, and he's a globalist, no doubt, and because of that, they actually are framing the story. They're going to tell the story. It's not a grassroots movement anymore. It is being financed by the globalist agenda. And one of the ideas that they use, or one of the strategies, and this is all in their books. If you look at Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, if you look in the Communist Manifesto and some of these other works of the globalist mindset, that they ridicule dissenting opinions and present their ideas as though they are widely accepted, even when they're not. For instance, gay marriage had always been opposed by the majority of Americans, and every time there was an actual vote on the subject of gay marriage, it was always voted down. In 2008, California had what was known as Proposition 8, which was to secure the idea that marriage should only be legal between a man and a woman. And when that vote was passed, and Californians voted, the majority of Californians that voted to uphold marriage between a man and a woman, and that it was a law against gay marriage being legal in California, and 70% of black people voted to uphold traditional marriage between a man and a woman, natural marriage I call it, because the laws of nature say that males and females should be together because that's how life is created. And so that is that's the history of it. So what they did, mainstream media went on an all-out campaign to fight against the ideology that marriage should only be between man and a woman, which is a historic, age-old concept that we all know to be the best opportunity for humanity to be perpetuated and to prosper is traditional marriage. The globalists also know that the traditional natural marriage is the biggest threat to their globalist agenda, which is why they're trying to attack it and try to erode away the concept of natural marriage. They also use words like homophobic and they ridicule these opinions. That's one of their strategies that they use. So anytime you say that you're for traditional biblical natural marriage and you're against gay marriage, they'll call you a homophobe, because that's how they ridicule you, and that's how they try to marginalize your opinion, as though everybody else feels one way and you're the oddball. And that's the strategy that they use, and they use it so much that eventually people start to believe it. And they say, oh, if everybody else believes that gay marriage is okay, then I guess I'm supposed to believe that too. That's one of their strategies they use. They study that, they strategize it, and that's how they implement it. Now, like I said, 70% of black people oppose gay marriage as of 2008. And then once President Obama endorsed gay marriage, public opinion began to change. And that's the celebrity idea, or the celebrity concept. And the word celebrity, also a star is someone of great influence. And so they promote these people as celebrities, and then and gatekeepers, and then they promote the agenda for the New World Order. One thing that you have to realize also is that the promotion of homosexuality is one of the pillars of the New World Order's move for population control and for the attack on the family unit, which is one of their biggest foes. And again, this is their documentation. They said that the biggest enemy of the New World Order is the Western culture, the Western Christian culture, and the nuclear family. Those are the two of the biggest enemies. So those are the two things that they attack the most, because they understood that if they can attack and erode the influence of those two things, then they had a chance to push forward their New World Order agenda. The Communist Manifesto, as I mentioned, there's a thing called the Jaffe Memo that you can look up, and these are actual documents that demonstrate that the forces behind the LGBTQ movement are the same as the New World Order's globalist agenda. Now, I'm not talking about everybody who's gay is not a part of that, globalist agenda. I'm saying those who are in charge, the gatekeepers, those who are funding these things and promoting them on these large platforms are all promoting this New World Order agenda. Now, let's look at President Obama, because I mentioned him in passing. He was very instrumental in getting gay marriage accepted in America. One of the most potent weapons of propaganda or public relations is called the celebrity dynamic. That's why corporations give millions of dollars to famous people to endorse their products. One celebrity endorsement can greatly shift public opinion for a product or an idea. Hollywood, pro sports, and the music industry have been a tool of the New World Order for years. It's widely reported that in order for a person to reach the top tier in the music industry and in Hollywood, they must swear allegiance to the New World Order agenda. This is why there's now a monolithic opinion that's being expressed against President Trump. You look at Republicans, Democrats, Hollywood, professional sports, all of these people have one voice and one opinion against President Trump. And Tim Allen, who was a very famous sitcom guy and movie Hollywood person, his show got canceled because he publicly said that you can't be a conservative in Hollywood because you'll get blackballed. And that's exactly what happened to him. Because Hollywood is one of the tools of the New World Order's agenda. And so nobody in Hollywood can have a dissenting opinion, or else you'll get blackballed, or you'll get your platform taken away from you. This is why this monolithic opinion is being expressed against President Trump. And President Trump is not a globalist. He's an anti-globalist. His platform is anti-globalist, I should say, which is why the Make America Great Again motto is a signal against the rise of globalism and the New World Order, which is why mainstream media, Hollywood, and now even pro sports has jumped on the bandwagon. So when he's talking about Make America Great, he's talking about bringing jobs back to America, securing the borders. All of these things are principles that go against the globalist agenda. And so I'm not here to tell you about what a great guy Trump is or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about the platform that he expressed. The platform that he expressed, to Make America Great Again, flies directly in opposition to the New World Order's agenda. Now, one of the things I always try to bring to your mind, isn't it interesting that none of the gatekeepers in pro sports, Hollywood, or even the political hierarchy that we have in place openly criticized President Obama for police brutality, even though he was black and the Attorney General, while he was president, was black. Trayvon Martin got shot and killed. Mike Brown got killed. But yet none of them criticized President Obama. It's because, whether you realize it or not, President Obama was one of the greatest tools that the global elite had and they used in recent times. He was put in place as a false sign that there was great political change that was taking place in the country. And in all actuality, President Obama pushed the globalist agenda faster and harder than even George W. Bush. Now, George H.W. Bush he's the one who did the speech back in, I think it's 1992. 1989, I think it was. I think it was 1989. It was around that time. But he's the one who got up in front of the world and talked about the New World Order that they were pushing. He was a former CIA director. He's very much interconnected and intertwined in the New World Order globalist agenda, without a doubt. George W. Bush wasn't so much. I mean, I'm not saying he didn't promote the agenda, but he was more so just like a pawn. And I don't think he really had a strong idea for the New World Order as much. But now you have Obama. Obama comes in office and he pushes the New World Order agenda even harder than George W. Bush. I'm not talking about George H.W. Bush, but George W. Bush, which is George Bush Jr. He pushed it even harder than him. And so when you look at how he promoted homosexuality, how he increased the U.S. debt, which is one of the tools, is make debt slaves out of people and nations. He ignored the black community and he pushed the LGBTQ and the illegal immigrant agenda harder, and while ignoring the black agenda. which is why he's from Chicago, and Chicago is one of the most dangerous cities in the country for black people. He's from there. He doesn't say anything about it. He hasn't done anything to help Chicago. And can you imagine what great power he had? What would have happened if he would have went to Chicago and had to sit down with these gang leaders and these different communities? If he sat down with them face to face at a public forum and said, "Look, you guys got to stop this. I want you not only to stop this, but I want you to make sure that that violence, to fight against violence in your community." Can you imagine what would have happened? Excuse me, if he'd have done that? But he was silent, didn't say anything. But because he was promoting the New World Order agenda, but because he was a personality and he was a popular person, especially in black people, he was a person of color, nobody criticized him. Nobody said to him, "Why don't you do something about this police brutality?" But now, since President Trump's in, they're acting like he's the problem, like he's killing these black people in Chicago. It's part of their agenda. They're promoting this. It's called mass mind control. It's called social engineering. And so when you understand the tactics that they're using, then you shouldn't allow it to frame your way of thinking about things. Now let's talk about LeBron James. LeBron James is the latest Illuminati puppet to be used in order to promote the globalist ideology. One of the signals that a person has been initiated into the fold and has reached the highest levels of the secret societies is the lifetime contract that he signed with Nike. From what I heard, the contract was worth at least $500 million. It was a lifetime contract. I never heard of an athlete signing a lifetime contract, especially while they were still playing, in the sport. Now, this was his entry into the upper echelon. Also, when he moved to L.A., you can kind of see that as a signal that he's going to become more active. L.A., especially in the Hollywood Hills, is very much involved in witchcraft, Kabbalah, which is the Mystery Babylon religion. That's why a lot of movie stars move to LA and move into Hollywood and, Hollywood Hills. It's very much, a lot of occult stuff goes on. Hollywood itself is the wood from the holly tree, which is what witches use to cast spells. So Hollywood itself is based on witchcraft and Kabbalah and all that other stuff. So him moving to LA is a signal that he is going to probably be more involved in this whole process. Also, if you ever go online and look at the tattoo on his chest, this is another proof. This is not in my opinion. He has a big tattoo of an ancient mythical creature called a griffin. And the griffin is a symbol of the boule, what's called the Black Boule. It's the black secret society that was created to pattern Yale's Skull and Bones, to pattern after Yale's Skull and Bones, which if you know about Skull and Bones is one of the secret societies that the Illuminati uses, especially for politicians and for other very influential people. Even the opening of his school in Akron was a false flag narrative. The school is named after him, and it's a public school that's being housed in a city-owned building and funded primarily by public funds. So they try to make it seem like he was the one doing this. It's a public school. Taxpayer, 80% of this, 80% more is public money, taxpayer money. But they're trying to make it seem like he's the one that is paying for the school. And I'm not knocking him for, he contributed, he made a donation of money, but the reason they shaped the story like that, because he is going to be very much a player in this globalist agenda moving forward. So I just want you to peep the game before it comes to pass. Like I said, although he's making a donation of the school, it's a good thing. However, the story is being pushed to place him a higher platform and to give him more influence over the society as a whole. It's no surprise that LeBron is being boosted up as a spokesperson for Black America, and the New World Order has three major tactics that they use. First, they quiet any dissenting opinion. So anybody who has an opinion that goes against their agenda, they look to quiet them. The second strategy is they marginalize any message or messengers that oppose their agenda. So they make it seem like they're ridiculous or they're fool, or if you stand for natural marriage, then you're either a homophobe or you're stupid or you're prehistoric in your thinking, those type of things. They say you're very naive or you just don't understand things correctly. So that's the second, is to marginalize the message and or the messenger that opposes their agenda. And third, and the most effective way, is they raise up what they call a messianic figure from a community or movement, and that person becomes the gatekeeper of their agenda, but at the cost of hijacking the true grassroots movement within the community. So when they frame the narrative, nothing ever gets done, but they act as though they're fighting against it. So these messianic figures. And LeBron James is just the latest puppet in the New World Order's globalist agenda, and he's following suit behind other puppets that have been historically used to kill any chances of true hope and change. And I'm going to leave you with these two examples. You know, I had this big thing about this statue in Charlottesville. And so black people were just up in outrage that there's a statue in Charlottesville, Virginia, of a Confederate racist soldier. Now, think about what a distraction. The whole world focused on that. People marched, and there was violence because of this. And at the same time, hundreds of people are getting shot in Chicago and all the inner cities in the country. Black males are being incarcerated at a 50 to 60% rate, even though they're only 6 or 7% of the population in America. Eugenics through abortion. 1,500 black babies are getting killed a day in America. In New York City, more black pregnancies end in abortion than birth in New York City. But yet they frame the narrative to make you think that the biggest problem you should be worried about is Charlottesville. This whole protest with Colin Kaepernick in the NFL, I'm not a big fan of that either. Not that I don't think that there is a problem at times with racial inequality and injustice. I think that police brutality is definitely an issue, not just for black people, but whenever there's a lot of times that we see police that overreact in situations where they shouldn't overreact. And, you know, in America, 2.5 times more white people get killed than black people by cops in America. So police brutality is an issue. But my thing is, if we really wanted to change something, why didn't Colin Kaepernick and the other NFL players actually go to police forces, police chiefs, mayors of cities? Why didn't they go to the communities where this is happening and sit down and talk with them, or have an open, you know, if they were to go there and have a big event there and bring mainstream media in, it would shine the spotlight on it and would help to stop these things from actually happening. But what they do is they frame the narrative, so now everybody's fussing at the NFL and the NFL players. And let me tell you something, the NFL, well, professional sports is the closest thing we have to a meritocracy. Now, meritocracy is a place that's not based on race or influence, but based on your merits. So you have these NFL players and professional athletes like LeBron James. They're making exorbitant amounts of money. They have a huge platform and they have a lot of influence. You have people of all races and colors buying merchandise for the NFL and NBA with the names of black athletes on the back of their jersey, or T-shirts with the faces. They're buying the sneakers of these black athletes, but yet they would have you to think that there's racial inequality. I don't think it really exists in the NFL or NBA. If it is, it's such a small extent. I would think the opposite is true, because if 80% of the NBA and 70% of the NFL is black, then and you know, like I said, black males only represent about 6 or 7% of the population in America. So where's the injustice there? They're making a lot more money. I'm gonna close you with this statistic. The average salary in America is between $38,000 and $48,000 a year, depending on where you want to look at. $38,000 to $48,000 a year per person is the average salary in America. The average salary of an NFL player is $1.2 million a year. So you have these schmucks like myself that may scrape up some money and go buy a ticket to go see an NFL game, and the guy who's making, what would that be? That would be 100. I'm not even gonna do that math. So much more money and influence and such a big platform. They're telling me how unfair life is. And so they wonder why there's some pushback. So I just want you to have your eyes open and understand what's going on. I wanted to talk about these strategies that's being employed. I want us to get beyond emotions and feelings and warm and fuzzy feelings and get to the actual facts and principles, and not look at the people or the personalities as being used to promote an agenda that's contrary to our best interests. This has been Dr. Joe Green. Until next time, peace and blessings to you. I love you. Shalom to you. Talk to you soon.